Time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The business news headlines is brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible.
And U.S. spending surges. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Friday, November 28, 2025. I'm Rachelle Moncrief. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast, locally, DBJ targets hardest hit sectors under its new $10 billion Jamaican business recovery program. On the regional front, St. Vincent's newly elected PM signals sweeping economic reset as NDP secures landmark 14-1 victory. And over on the global stage, Americans spend more this holiday weekend despite high prices and weak confidence. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
Caribbean dreams, instant turmeric tea. What you put in is what you get out. What you put in is what you get out. Yeah. Build up your body, boost up your brain. Take on the world now. Say bye-bye pain. Caribbean dreams, instant turmeric tea. Be good to you. Caribbean dreams, instant turmeric tea. Distributed by Amalgamated Distributors Limited.
Has so much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
CBX Business News. We begin with a targeted push to rebuild the economy. Jamaica's post-Melissa recovery effort is shifting from emergency response to structured economic rebuilding, with the Development Bank of Jamaica (DBJ) moving to fill some of the biggest financing gaps facing the private sector. With billions in losses across several sectors, the DBJ is rolling out the first targeted phase of its new M5 recovery program. In a recent update, DBJ Managing Director Dr. David Lowe says the bank has pinpointed 4 priority sectors as the areas most urgently in need of intervention.
So we have 4 clear verticals, and the first is agriculture. As we know, St. Elizabeth, our breadbasket, was severely impacted. So we've been working with the Ministry of Agriculture to make sure that we're working on their priorities in terms of what those businesses need in terms of support to regain good footing and to extend their ability to regain meaningful economic engagement. The second, manufacturing. And manufacturing is a two-sided situation, because where you have agro-processors who have had losses to their main inputs locally, they may have been operating in another parish that wasn't affected immediately by the storm. So we have to engage in ways to facilitate their credit needs in terms of making sure that this disruption allows them to continue in a meaningful way.
Distribution and tourism have also been identified as priority sectors under the program.
Distribution, which covers retail, and wholesale. We've seen lots of small micro businesses affected in this space. And again, we want to be very targeted and very focused on making sure that these windows support them in their capacity to restore normalcy. Tourism, critical. Tourism has a number of areas that we have identified that we have immediate targeted responses for. People in the craft sector, those that are in attractions, and any other adjacent part of what we constitute as tourism and hospitality. We have a product that we've designed for you, and we'll be announcing more details as we go along.
Meanwhile, the DBJ is also launching a grant component to support local entrepreneurs.
We are also going to roll a grant program into our funding needs. And how this grant program is going to work is that we want to encourage innovation. We want to encourage things that can bring greater levels of resilience. There's going to be a lot of innovation because we've seen anywhere in the world where you have major impacts and fallout like this, you find that there are entrepreneurs who see an opportunity to do things better than what they were doing before. And we want to be able to give that support. They shouldn't have to pay or be penalized for innovation. So we want to make sure there's a grant element to that. So that will be wrapped in some of our offerings as we go forward.
That was DBJ Managing Director Dr. David Lowe. A new layer of economic fallout is emerging from Hurricane Melissa, one that never made the front pages, but is crippling some of Jamaica's most active commercial corridors. According to the Small Business Association of Jamaica's second Vice President, Denise Williams, the devastation to businesses by Hurricane Melissa extends far beyond the heavily publicized parishes. In an interview with CBX News, she says several parishes that did not record catastrophic structural damage are facing severe operational shutdowns.
We're aware that quite a number of parishes got hit. And I just want to make the point that St. Andrew, St. Mary, and St. Thomas and St. Anne got hit, even though other parishes had such incredible devastation.
She says small firms that survived physically intact suffered days or even weeks of forced downtime.
Where the hurt comes in is when you don't have a generator, number one, number two, a solar system, and number three, Starlink. So these three things would allow a business basically anywhere in the country to keep operating. So members in construction who have trucks are, and other physical equipment that may have been damaged by mud or had light posts, blown down on them, or just simple theft. So the construction industry, a lot of equipment is gone.
That was second Vice President of the Small Business Association of Jamaica, Denise Williams. Electricity provider, the Jamaica Public Service Company, JPS, has captured the Utility of the Year award at the CACU OUR 2025 Customer Service Distinction Awards. Fresh off weeks of unprecedented disruption caused by Hurricane Melissa, JPS President and CEO Hugh Grant told CBX News that the award is a powerful signal that even under pressure, its service standards and customer care commitments remain intact.
I'm extremely proud that we here at JPS received the Utility of the Year award. That I'm extremely proud of the team. I'm extremely proud of the partnerships, and we here at JPS are committed to safe, reliable, cost-effective service while, of course, providing a +1 customer experience. I'm thankful for all my other utility partners and the heightened partnerships, particularly at this unprecedented time of devastation.
JPS's leadership credited the win to what he called a taller order of responsibility.
At this particular moment in time, given the unprecedented impact of Hurricane Melissa, it makes this award even that much more special, as we as utilities are called to a taller order to provide our essential service. And while we're here tonight, we know many do not have it, and we're committed to working 24/7 to deliver our service to you, our valued customers as we continue to partner with all stakeholders to make that happen.
That was President and CEO of JPS, Hugh Grant. In other news, Jamaica's industrial sector is feeling renewed pricing pressure, with fresh data from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin showing producer prices slipping again in October. In its latest report released on Thursday, Statin reports that the Producer Price Index (PPI) for mining and quarrying fell 4.2%, driven almost entirely by a 4.4% decline in bauxite mining and alumina processing. Over the past 12 months, the mining index has plunged 31.7%, underscoring the continued volatility facing one of Jamaica's largest export industries. The manufacturing index also dipped 0.2%, pulled down by a 1.6% decline in refined petroleum products. That drop was partially offset by a small 0.1% rise in food, beverages, and tobacco, the sector's heaviest weighted group. Despite October's monthly decline, manufacturing is still up 2.4% year-on-year, supported by stronger food industry prices, even as petroleum weakens. Statin notes that October's PPI reflects producers purchasing raw materials at last month's exchange rate, a factor that may continue shaping cost movements going forward. We go now to updates from the Bank of Jamaica on how the currency markets traded today. In Friday's currency trading session, the US dollar is selling for $161.20, the Canadian for $115.07, the pound for $214.05, while $189.46 is the going rate for the euro. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Friday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 103 stocks, of which 52 advanced, 32 declined, and 19 traded firm. Leading the winners are One-on-One Educational Services, Sterling Investments USD, Jamaica Stock Exchange, and Caribbean Producers Jamaica. While leading the losers are Margaritaville Turks, Cygnus Real Estate Financial JMD, ISP Finance Services, and a JMMB Group 7.15% cumulative redeemable preference share. The main index advanced by 2,813.30 points, or 0.89%, to close at 318,658.37 points. The junior market index advanced by 47.93 points, or 1.44%, to close at 3,386.07 points.
And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard.
In today's Market Education Feature, we're looking at sunk costs. A sunk cost is any time, money, or effort that has already been spent and cannot be recovered. When past investments influence your future decisions, especially when they no longer bring value, it can lead to poor choices. For example, if you pay for a non-refundable 8-week online course and realize early on that it isn't useful, continuing simply because you've already spent the money would be a sunk cost decision. The original investment is gone, and staying in the course only requires more time and effort without real benefit.
The Market Education Feature was brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards.
And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses. And Pulse Investments.
We get it! We get the big contract! 50,000 units a month for 3 years! Great! Won't need help.
If you are a business owner that requires capital for the expansion of your business, talk to a registered broker today to find out more about listing your company on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, an efficient alternative to other financing options.
Thank God for the Jamaica Stock Exchange junior market.
The Jamaica Stock Exchange, providing a fair, efficient, and transparent stock market.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is on the verge of its largest economic and leadership transition in more than 2 decades, after the New Democratic Party, NDP, stormed to a decisive 14-1 victory in Thursday's general election. This historic victory ended 23 years of Unity Labour Party rule under Dr. Ralph Gonsalves and positions Prime Minister-elect Dr. Godwin Friday to rapidly reset the country's development agenda. In his first address earlier today, Dr. Friday signaled that the incoming administration will prioritize economic transformation, declaring that Vincentians voted not merely for a new government, but for a change in circumstances.
And I want to thank you so much for the trust that you have placed in us. I know that there are lots of challenges ahead. We are reasonable people. We know what we can achieve and what we must work harder to get done. It is not about changing government, it's about changing our circumstances. To do that, to change our circumstances naturally, we must change a government that has failed to perform, and we are going to take on this task starting now.
That was St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister-elect Dr. Godwin Friday. The Bahamas is betting big on the skies, rolling out what officials describe as the largest family island infrastructure push in the country's history. A sweeping airport renaissance spanning 17 airports across the archipelago. Speaking during a government press conference on Thursday, Director of Aviation Dr. Kenneth Roma says the program will drive more than $750 million in aviation investments across the family island.
The Airport Renaissance Project, through the government's initiative, is about $300,000. When we look at our private partners, the price tag again for the entire Renaissance, including the PPP, is going to be over $500 million. And I want to quantify that because when we speak about Renaissance, that $500 million really for family island Renaissance through PPP arrangements and also the government's input of cash. I also want to speak about the investments at LPIA. We know there was a $10 million investment on the air side, and LPIA to the president CEO has announced plans to invest some $200 million on the terminal side, inclusive of plans, the RFP for a new airport hotel. So overall, the investments for infrastructure in aviation really is north of $750 million in terms of overall investments, unprecedented again in our country's history.
That was the Bahamas' Director of Aviation, Dr. Kenneth Roma. In other news, Dominica is doubling down on a development strategy that keeps taxes stable and debt in check. That's according to Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt. Touring the nearly completed Center Grand Bay housing development, Skerritt declared that the country's major housing and community infrastructure projects are being built entirely from citizenship by investment, CBI revenue, not borrowed money.
Dominica is a case study on how a country, whether it's a developed or developing country, we from such a program called Citizenship Investment Program or Migration Program or Residency Program as some we call it, a case study of how a government has been able to utilize those funds for the economic and social welfare of the people of the country. So these are monies that we would have to borrow, and the more you borrow, the more debt you have to pay, and the more burden you're going to place on the citizens of the country, because you have to pay the money, and you have to raise the money from taxation. And of course, as we said, our people cannot bear any more taxes in the country. And so I'm very happy that the government recognizes its responsibility to people, and that we have moved so many people to better accommodation.
That was Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerritt. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 20 securities, of which 7 advanced, 10 declined, and 3 traded firm. Today's winners are National Flour Mills, First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, A.S. Bryden and Sons Holdings, and Scotiabank Trinidad and Tobago, while leading the losers are Unilever Caribbean, Answer Merchant Bank, Angostura Holdings, and Guardian Media. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All-TNT Index declined by 12.33 points to close at 1,359.26. The Composite Index declined by 6.41 points to close at 942.46. The Cross-Listed Index remained at 69.47. The SME Index advanced by 0.12 points to close at 96.30. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment is up next.
Grew up and see my granny and save her money under her mattress.
Exactly. Okay. Your grandmother house never burned down? No, you reached that, so.
That was a one-off thing.
That could have happened to anybody. That's why you must put your money in a financial institution and protect it.
What if the bank crash?
Well, that's where JDIC comes in.
What you mean?
JDIC is a financial safety net which provides coverage for your money in case your financial institution fails.
Explain that to me.
All right. Because of the JDIC deposit insurance scheme, once you put your money into a financial institution like a bank or building society, you can get coverage of up to a maximum of $1.2 million per deposit of your financial institution if it should fail. And for even more information, you can visit their new website at www.jdic.org, and you can follow the social media platforms for the latest information.
JDIC, protecting deposits for you and me.
In international news, Americans shopped cautiously but steadily through Thanksgiving, pushing online spending up 5% year-on-year as more people chose laptops and phones over crowded Black Friday lines. Adobe Analytics reported US $6.4 billion in online purchases on Thanksgiving Day alone, exceeding expectations despite high prices and soft consumer confidence. Inflation, elevated retail prices, and a weakening labor market shaped buyer behavior. Salesforce says U.S. online selling prices climbed 8% this season, far above the 5% global average, partly due to tariff-driven cost pressures and retailers trying to protect margins. Lower-income households pulled back, while the richest 10% accounted for nearly half of all U.S. consumer spending. And those pressures on American shoppers are also spilling into the labor market, nowhere more visibly than at Starbucks. Starbucks is now facing the largest strike in its history. Workers have expanded their indefinite walkout from 65 to more than 120 stores nationwide, demanding higher wages, better staffing, and settlements on hundreds of pending unfair labor practice charges. The company says the impact remains limited, with 99% of its 17,000 U.S. stores still open. But union organizers insist momentum is growing, especially on a Black Friday weekend where customer traffic normally surges. Negotiations remain stalled after delegates rejected Starbucks' April contract proposal that offered minimum 2% annual raises. And Starbucks isn't the only global giant dealing with holiday season disruption. Europe saw its own wave of labor action. Amazon warehouse workers in Germany staged Black Friday walkouts, targeting one of the busiest retail days of the year as they push for a collective bargaining agreement. In Spain, labor groups organized protests at Zara stores, demanding stronger workplace protections. The coordinated actions, though limited in scale, hit during Europe's peak promotional weekend and underscore rising worker pressure across global retail and logistics networks. And while the retail sector battles labor challenges, aviation is dealing with an urgent technical issue affecting airlines worldwide. Airbus has issued a mandatory recall for A320 family jets to correct a software bug in the ELAC, the elevator and aileron computer, which manages pitch control. Airlines must install the fix before their next commercial flight, with only positioning flights to maintenance bases allowed. The alert affects one of the world's most widely used aircraft types. Thales, which manufactures the ELAC hardware, says the faulty functionality sits in software not under its responsibility. While Airbus has not disclosed the number of jets involved, operators may face schedule adjustments as planes cycle through rapid turn repair procedures. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side. And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, DBJ targets hardest hit sectors under its new $10 billion Jamaican business recovery program. Regionally, Friday signals sweeping economic reset as NDP secures a landmark 14-1 victory. And internationally, Americans spend more this holiday weekend despite high prices and weak confidence. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rochelle Moncrief. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.
Hi, I'm Shalette Cox. You're watching the Caribbean Business Exchange. Your region, your